Greetings. Three black men speak. This is Manifest Ra, founder, visionary of the Sage Men. I'm with my great brothers, Khalil Maasi and Emmanuel Taylor. And so we have a very important and vital conversation to share with you this evening to illuminate, to give some clarity on what black men are going through, what black people in general, and also the entire human family. And so we've heard from political pundits who are black, we've heard from black activists, uh, but now is the opportunity to hear from three black men who are also mindfulness consultants and experts. And so when we talk about mindfulness, we're talking about the ability to be in the present moment and to live from the best version of oneself through breathing strategies, visualization techniques, being grounded, centered, and fully present. And so, with so much going on, it is time to hear from three black men who are also mindfulness presenters. And so, myself, Manifest Ra, I do a lot of corporate presentations on mindful leadership, emotional intelligence, helping leaders, helping people of all sorts see the big picture, to calm themselves, to cultivate that inner tranquility, and be able to lead themselves on how they're showing up in the workplace and in their families. My colleague Khalil Maasi is a martial arts expert and consultant, and also an assault prevention specialist, meaning that he teaches women in particular, but people in general, how to protect themselves, how to fortify themselves. And he's also a mindfulness and qigong consultant as well. So he brings some perspectives from the African traditions that are very much in the DNA of people like us. And so also Emmanuel Taylor is a tantric master and expert. He helps people cultivate their best version of who they are. Relationship with self, so they can show up in their intimate relationships, their family relationships, as the best version of themselves. And so the visionary, the warrior, and the tantric are very much front and center during these times. We're living in very interesting times, folks. And this is just for the entire human family. However, there are some issues that are specific to Black people and Black men in particular. And it is time to hear three Black men speak. So I'm going to jump right in and bring on my good brother, Khalil Maasi. Khalil, there's so much tension on the planet right now. People are protesting, they're rioting, they're feeling anxiety. What is going on from a black man's perspective? What are you hearing from other black men, black people in general? And what's also going on with you? You know, how have you shown up in the past through these experiences that we have going on? Because nothing is new here. You know, we have some technology that can show what's going on around the world. But many of these issues have been going on for a very long time. So give us a perspective relative to the warrior archetype, relative to what's going on.
Um, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that was first. I just want to give thanks for being on and for people tuning in. Thanks to the Creator for allowing me to be here. Um, and that was a loaded question, and I don't want to attempt to speak for all black men,
Mhm.
so I'll speak from my perspective. In terms of what's going on right now, I'll just say right now these things are cyclical, and my unique perspective is that I was raised by a father who was very active during the 60s and 70s, particularly here where I'm at in the North New Jersey area. And He was a member of the Black Power movement and the Black Arts movement here. He worked with Imam Mary Baraka. Um, Interestingly enough, now Newark is receiving spotlight because the its ability to have been able to protest without violence breaking out in Newark, New Jersey. Uh, uh, and part of that reason is why is because the mayor we have here in Newark, Raz Baraka, is the son of Amiri Baraka, and there has been 5 decades or so of learning and implementation of how to organize and protest and such forth here, and particularly without it turning violent. So we've learned from the past uh, on how to operate, and there's even been articles talking about how Newark, New Jersey needs to be used as a model nationally and internationally on how to protest. And we, people are aware of the Newark riot, what they call it. We call it the Newark Rebellion. Um, so I don't even like that term riot, you know, except when an outside agent provocateurs are coming in to start stuff. And that's a whole nother conversation. As far as what I'm hearing, as far as my elders are saying, they're just talking about, when I speak to my elder black men, they are talking about how this is, like we said, this is cyclical. People talk about revolution, and it comes the word revolve, which is the root word. It's a wheel. Um, I always say that we have to get off the wheel. We have to evolve. We have to. We can revolt, but once we revolt, and we need to get organized to get an understanding of where we are, what our goals and aims are, and we need to evolve. We need an evolution, or we'll just go back through the cycle again. You know, and we could talk about that on the spiritual, mental, or physical level. That the goal is always to evolve. In terms of the people my age, my peer group, some of us were active during the Black Studies years, when Afrocentric curriculums were being implemented in the colleges and such forth. And then we know there's a whole long story about how when the record labels and the major, heard conscious music, you know, that was drowned out and gangster music came in, crack flooded into our community, gangsterism spread across the community. So a lot of us who were active during that time are looking and seeing how again another cycle is coming forward. And as far as the youth are just basically saying they tired of it. They want to be free, you know. The young black men that I'm talking to and have access to, they're tired of the situation. They want to be free. They want changes, and these kids aren't having it anymore. Black men and black women, our youth are not having it anymore. They're not afraid. We've raised, and the society has raised a level of fearless young warrior men and women who just aren't going to put up with it, and they're going to stand on the front line, and they're not afraid of death. And I'm not saying that I'm advocating any one step of march of death, but what I'm saying is that they're confronting this militarization that's going on, this white supremacy that's going on, and they're not backing down. So the world is listening, or at least acting like they're listening right now, because they don't know what to do with these young folks. They didn't. The
Great
youth did
insights.
not. The youth did not respond in the way that the system thought that they would respond.
Thank you so much for those insights, Khalil. And that is, what many people are seeing as well, a level of
Mm-hmm.
anger, a level of determination. And we'll also
Mm-hmm.
look shortly on some of the solutions and more enlightened approaches that we have learned that can assist and provide direction where everyone, benefits who wants to create a better world. So, Emmanuel, um, how does this tension, does this anxiety show up in our relationships? I mean, if someone is particularly black men in this particular case, if they're fearful at times of just being pulled over or being able to go to the supermarket and come back, you know, what's going on within them, and then also how does this show up with their families, their mates, and then society in general, people from all walks of life, from your perspective, how how can this be detrimental to how black men are showing up in their relationships?
That's a great question. What I would say is that, okay, I didn't know if my video was frozen. So One way to look at it would be through the perspective of psychology, right? So there was a psychologist by the name of Maslow, and he put out this theory called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And it basically says that there are tiers to the way that we approach our needs and the way that we get our needs met in life. And we start with the most basic biological needs on the bottom. We need shelter, and we need food, and we need water, we need to breathe, right? These things are at the bottom of the pyramid. And then above that, we have our safety and security. If we ever feel like those basic needs are compromised, then we come back down to the pyramid again. Way above those basic needs and safety and security, we have esteem for others, esteem for ourselves. We have our relationships with other people. Above that, we have these concepts, these social constructs, things like justice and judgment and equity, right? And above all of that is us being able to bring out the highest and best version of ourselves and offer that to other people. So the way that this works is the things on the bottom of the pyramid always draw our attention. They always take precedence. And so if we're worried about justice and we're worried about judgment and we're worried about equity in society, right? If we're worried about our relationships with, the people in our lives that we love, but our basic needs are compromised, it pulls us back down to the bottom. Our mental focus, our energy, we don't have the ability to stay focused on these other things at the top if the things at the bottom are compromised. And throughout most of our history of being here on this soil, in these United States, our basic needs were compromised. As a community, we didn't have the ability to meet our basic needs, and that kept us at the bottom of the pyramid. Our relationships suffered, right? Since the 60s, we've had the ability to build up to an extent economically. And although, we still experience poverty at a higher rate than many other other racial groups and ethnic groups here in the US, our people are doing better now than they were 100 years ago, right? But we've still never been able to move all the way up that hierarchy of needs because that next level is safety and security. And when any of us, regardless of how much money we're making or what our status is, can be pulled over and shot and killed, it keeps us in a place of fear, right? It keeps us in a place of thinking that, hey, maybe I got groceries and my bills are paid this month, but I still fear for my life. I don't know if I'm safe. And whenever we feel that way, our attention goes from the top of the pyramid, focused on giving our best, focused on giving the best to others in our lives that we love and respect, giving the best in our relationships. When our safety and our security are compromised, our attention gets pulled back down again. So we don't have the mental capability, we don't have the freedom or the luxury to give the best of who we are to others when we're worried about our basic needs or when we're worried about our safety and our security, right? So at this time, when our people are in such an erratic state, fearful, right? We don't have the ability to invest in our relationships the way that we would want to. We don't have the freedom, or we don't have the privilege to be able to do that, right? Investing in our relationships requires that we step out of that mindset, right? If we want to be able to give our best in our relationships, we have to first internally cultivate peace, right? And when we're able to do that, then we can show up in our relationships. But if we're always getting pulled back down to worrying about our basic needs, our safety, and our security, then our relationships will definitely suffer. So, that's part of what's going on and part of how this dynamic is impacting our relationships at this time. Unless we're able to cultivate a place of peace first and relate with each other from there, right? We don't have the opportunity to give our best, and we really don't have the capacity to receive the best that others are trying to give us as well. So that definitely is creating a barrier between people in our communities right now.
Great insights, Emmanuel. And so when we talk about cultivating relationships, as you said, it starts with self, being able to manage one's own fears and emotions and self-love, and then also our immediate family, and then ultimately everyone around the world. So, and so what you just said is right on point, as well as what Khalil has stated, because from a visionary standpoint, if which aligns more with the heart, people living from their heart. When we hear that phrase, you're living from the heart, You're living abundantly, authentically. You're in alignment with what you're passionate about, what wakes you up in the morning. And so if I have to be concerned about just being able to drive down the street and not get pulled over, or crime in my communities, or life or death situations, flight or fight situations on a daily basis, that impedes, as you said, the upper faculties from being fully activated and open. And so then I'm just down in the root chakra, down in my stand my ground, the warrior, which is very necessary aspects of the warrior. But I know Khalil will go into other aspects of the warrior. But I basically stay in my lower energy centers, lower vibrations. And so, in terms of the visionary, when one is consistently in a flight or fight syndrome, and they're worried about just basic necessities that should be provided to all, but just being in that constant state of fear, it doesn't allow one to see the bigger picture. What am I here to do beyond this flight or fight mode right here of fighting, of whatever I'm dealing with? People oftentimes are not reminded with what's truly in their heart and in their upper centers. And so this affects everyone on the planet, because it's a tense moment right now. However, I'm sure it's affecting black men even more because they're seeing images of brutality, of death on a regular basis. And so with that, we're going to go back to you, Emmanuel, before we come to Khalil. What are some solutions, if you will, with how we can have a better relationship with self, and we can shift from that fear, from that flight or fight, moment to moment experience, to actually showing up as the best version of ourselves, even in the midst of everything that we're experiencing on the planet.
I appreciate that question. Well,
Mhm.
so from the point of view of Tantra, the Tantric sciences, so Tantra deals with the ebb and flow and the movement of energy, both in the natural world and inside of our bodies, right? And it deals with how it is we're able to bring opposing forces into balance and harmony, both within ourselves and in our relationships as well, right? Tantra is based on observations of the way that energy flows in the natural world and an understanding of the structure of the human body, right? So just as a preference, because I know not everybody is familiar with the term, uh, Tantra teaches a lot of principles that are helpful for navigating situations like this, right? People have been quarantined for months, right? They've been quarantined for months in the spring, leading up to the height of the summer, right? This is the time when the energy in nature is building. This is the time when the sun becomes stronger, the days become longer. This is the time when we all feel more energized, right? This is the time when we want to be more active. We want to go outside. We want to do things. And we've been bottled up, and that energy is building up inside. At the very same time, all of these injustices have been occurring. And so it's like putting the cap on the bottle and shaking up the soda, right? And now people are finally getting out, and the energy is overwhelming. It's almost explosive, right? When I see a situation like this, I see the timing of a situation like this. I think to myself, it was bound to happen because of the circumstances, right? So how is Tantra useful? How is a mindfulness practice useful in a situation like this, right? We know that when we operate out of fight or flight, we're operating out of the neocortex here in the back of the brain. When we're operating out of a strong emotion, we're in the middle of the brain in the amygdala. None of those places allow us to problem solve, right? None of those places allow us to reason or to use logic, to see all different perspectives, to consider the options and figure out what's best, right? That happens here in the frontal lobe, right? And the brain isn't really one brain, right? From an evolutionary perspective, these different sections of the brain evolve differently, and they actually inhibit each other. When one of them needs to work, it'll shut down the other, right? When you're in a life threatening situation, you shut down your reasoning and your logic so that you can push the car off of yourself, right? So that you can use your instincts so that they're not clouded. So these parts of the brain, They inhibit each other. They act like they're different organs, right? What we're up against as Black people here on this land is very complex. It's a system of white supremacy that has been embedded and has been growing deeper and deeper for hundreds of years. It's like a shape shifting serpent, that changes form to continue to try to attack us, right? And so we need to be aware. We need to understand what's going on, and we need to be able to weigh our decisions to be able to make the best actions, right? And we can't do that when we're in a highly energized emotional state. Our brain literally shuts down its ability to reason. But it's not just intensity that's going to get us out of this situation. It's not just intensity that's going to change things. We need to be strategic about how it is that we create a better society, one that's worth living in, right? Now, the problem is a lot of people aren't used to dealing with high amounts of energy flowing through their body and dealing with such intensity and still being able to make good decisions, right? So a tantra practice is helpful because in tantra we cultivate sexual energy. We cultivate the energy associated with orgasm. We channel it through the body intentionally for the sake of healing, for personal development, for growth, for reproductive health, and to assist our relationships. In order to do that, you have to be able to carry high amounts of energy in your body. And you still have to be able to act, ethically, right? You still have to be able to act with the intention to heal. You have to establish your intentions and use that energy to support it. So a tantra practice teaches people how to deal with being charged up, right? Being energized, being fully activated, fully turned on, right? And still using that energy with intention and focus to be able to accomplish things that most people wouldn't even believe are possible, right? And that's what we want to do as a community right now. And that's something that Tantra can help people to do.
Wow, that's great. That's exactly what's needed. It's what the doctor, the good doctor, Mother Nature, Mother Earth, is prescribing for people to love themselves, to go within their own being. We were doing some of that, as you said, in quarantine. We were forced to go within our own being, and so it was an alchemical process. So many people were doing great things, and now, as you said, hey, when the door is open to an extent to come out, it's a highly charged, conflicting situation. So that energy, that flows through stagnant pipes wants to come out and express itself, and it's not necessarily ideal conditions for that. So, Khalil, in terms of the warrior, how can the warrior, the peaceful warrior, the inner warrior, embrace and transmute some of this toxic and fully activated yet misplaced energy?
Um, in terms of warriorhood throughout history, well, let's take for what we know in Chinese history, whereas the integration of internal healing methods with warrior practice were utilized to order to focus and discipline the warrior, focus their energy, you know, focus their mind, uh, cultivate their energy. Now we know about this through the Asian culture, but this also was a method of practice in Africa as well. Of course, through popularization of the Asian martial arts in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, this was only known about in that part of the world. But this is something that actually was utilized throughout the world. Here in North America, even in Europe, there is research and information and evidence of people of the warrior society using these methods. Um, and so, for in terms of using systems of internal healing like qigong, tai chi, such forth like that, even yoga, we use these methods in order to cool the mind, you know, uh, develop, developed the energy, what we call transmission system, you know, in order to utilize this energy for more positive purposes. Um, Again, when we talk about warrior martial arts, most people think fighting, you know, taking over someone, land, nation, whatever, individual, such forth. But the highest level of martial arts is to be able to master the self, you know, and that's what in our system of training and study, what you know we focus on in mastering the self, mastering our own energies, observing our own self, knowing who we are, tapping back into the divine, you know, our own divine nature, you know, controlling the animal nature that exists inside of man, and rising to that level of divineness or God. But it's a process. It's an arduous process, and it focuses us to look at ourselves.
And oftentimes we think of this level of warriorhood. We think of the kung fu series that
Mm-hmm,
unfolded during the 70s and 80s and things. And but as you said, traditions the world over have always
mm-hmm,
had these systems, and so
mm-hmm,
they're needed more now than ever. With what we are experiencing. And so, what you just stated, as well as Emmanuel referred to, the similarities of dealing with the reptilian brain, that aspect of our being that wants to fight and defend, but not from an enlightened and
mm-hmm,
efficient point of view. And so, bringing it home to the visionary, and what I often share is being able to have that emotional intelligence, being able to activate that mindful leadership within every being. I remember I did a presentation a while ago for leaders and executives of a county in the suburbs of DC, and not everybody was a supervisor or boss, so to speak. And what I reminded them is that we all are leaders. The leader
mm-hmm,
within. I don't care what your station in life is. Your rank, where you are in the community. Leadership is enlightened action. And so, a child can have that, an elder, people in between, um, where one sits in terms of their mainstream rank has absolutely nothing really to do with leadership. It's how we're showing up
mm-hmm,
with our energy. And so I'm excited about this conversation because this is what needs to take place. There's a collective anger. You have so many people who are walking around with
mm-hmm,
frustration. I've watched some of the interviews, and just like I know you all have, of celebrities, but also just everyday people, and seeing them out in the streets, and they have this flight or fight energy where they're
mm-hmm,
confronting law enforcement, confronting other people. They're seeing images on TV, and uh, there are a lot of people who don't necessarily know how to do what we're talking about here. So, with that, we have a very empowering and I would say a transformative initiative that the three of us are involved in,
mm-hmm,
mindfulness and manhood, that
mm-hmm,
we're going to be sharing with Black men in particular, but the human family in general. And so we want as many men to register to be included. We want women referring men to the program because the more we can share, what we've experienced. And I mean, I've had scenarios where I've been pulled over. And I've had to breathe in that moment. I remember many years ago, I was giving a friend, a female, a ride. Um, um, it wasn't late at night. It was maybe like 10 p.m. To an affluent area of Washington D.C. This is probably about 10 years ago, and the law enforcement personnel, this particular person, and again, we want to be clear. not make blanket statements in terms of law enforcement, but there are systemic issues there that go back hundreds of years relative to our experiences with law enforcement. And so I was pulled over simply for actually being in the area there. And so when the officer walked up to the car, I took some deep breaths, and I asked, how could I help? What was the issue, so forth and so on. And this particular officer simply, didn't give me any reasoning, wanted to see license, registration, things of that nature, which I provided. And so what I, in my state of calm and inner tranquility, I simply said, I'm giving this young lady a ride. She lives, a few blocks up the street. And I wasn't belligerent. I didn't allow the reptilian energy to come forward and to be confrontational. I stayed within my inner G, my divine intelligence. I reiterated on two other occasions, I'm giving the young lady a ride home. And so, because the first time I said that did seem to be insufficient to the officer, she chimed in, yeah, I live right up the street, so forth and so on. And the officer then pulled off, and he was, to be quite honest, there was a level of anger that more couldn't come out of the scenario, and that I was calm, I was peaceful, and I didn't give the scenario a toxic energy from my own being. And I've had other scenarios as well. I don't want to go into that, but that wasn't my first rodeo, and I give thanks by training with your father, Shaha Infadishi Shaha Masi, and others who are experts in internal warriorship, energy work, that I was able to stay calm in that moment. And we know that that's not everyone's experience, and be able to see high above, and to align with one's higher faculties, as you've talked about, Emmanuel, the frontal lobe, that divine intelligence that gives us insight in terms of what to say and what not to say in those moments. And so, what do you envision in this mindfulness and manhood initiative, Khalil, in terms of men receiving in terms of the internal warrior in this time?
Um, First, I would say, before I talk about that, is that just to answer what you were just talking about being pulled over, a lot of our young men and men in general need to have protocols in place for when we are approached and pulled over. And because we, on a whole, on a larger level, don't have that, many of us or find us in situations that even if we're being mindful at the moment, we don't know how to react and respond because we don't have specific protocols in our community on how to respond. And when I mention that to some people, they say, "Well, I have rights. They shouldn't be pulling me over." Da, 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 da. You do, but you argue that with the judge. There's a way in which you act what you're encountered, and some people don't like to hear that. You know, make it home, make it back to your family. You know, argue with the judge. Don't argue with or don't try not to put yourself in a position where you could be killed and such forth like that. There's a elder sister by the name of Carol Teller. If you Google her, in her book she had out back in the 80s, maybe earlier, called The Little Black Book. If you Google that, Carol Teller's Little Black Book, and it gave a list of protocols on what to do when stopped by the police. And I've been kind of pushing that back out there again lately to get our young men and women to understand how to deal when you're approaching these situations. Because if you like it into a state of war, if you're captured by the enemy, you should know what things you should do: name, rank, serial number. What you should speak on, what you shouldn't, what your rights are, such and so forth. So that being said, in terms of a warrior training in this type of situation, or in terms of our training, again, the goal for us, a warrior first is the person who faces themselves. You know, that's what I was always taught from a very young age. Um, a warrior is a person who masters themselves. So our goal is to master ourselves, master how we operate in the world, be mindful of how we operate, how we move, uh, And when we talk about being mindful, just being aware of the situation, your emotions in the situation, you know, your surroundings, uh, uh, what the outcome of your actions could be based on how you respond to the action that are being taken against you. It's just basically building a high level of awareness and how to respond properly in any given situation, particularly dangerous.
Hey, I know, sign me up, and I know Emmanuel's all in, and many others who are listening. And so, we all are encouraged. This is an opportunity, a pivotal moment to shift, and everything happens according to the universal plan, there are no coincidences. So, just imagine if millions and millions and millions of people, black men, but also people in general, can start to cultivate this inner peaceful warrior that is able to deal with self, deal with circumstances that are an extension of oneself. That's transformative to the entire human family. So I'm excited about that, Emmanuel. What are some of the approaches that you envision in the mindfulness and manhood relative to the tantric, with what we're dealing with and how we can show up as the best version of ourselves? What should men and people in general expect?
I appreciate that. I think that a lot of times when people hear Tantra, sometimes men, when men hear Tantra or studying Tantra, taking a Tantra course or something like that, they think that the end outcome is going to be that they're just like, I'm just going to be able to have crazy sex. I'm just going to be able to give women orgasms without touching them. And like, I'm just going to be just like this mind blowing dude out here who's better than all of the other men and just like, blowing out the competition and like, just sex game, just crazy. And none of that is really the heart and the core of Tantra, you know, where all of those things that men think that they want, oftentimes when they hear Tantra, are really the side effects of doing deep personal work, of doing internal work, of dealing with themselves, you know, and in the process of so transforming in a way that they're free, and by nature of them being free and being fully in their masculine energy, right? Then when they relate to, women, then women get to be in their feminine, and the flow of energy between the masculine and the feminine is balanced, and things happen naturally, right? What really happens is it's not a bunch of techniques that people learn, to become better in bed. It's a way of transforming self, of taking everything that is locked up inside, allowing it to be free, right? It's a way of practicing discipline, of introspection, of looking internally to find out what's not moving the way that it's supposed to, figuring out where things need to be uh, and giving them a nudge so that they can get aligned so that everything can flow easily, right? That's a difficult process. It takes discipline to do. It takes disciplining the mind and disciplining the body. And that's helpful when you're pulled over by a police officer and you want to stay calm. It's helpful when you're being confronted by a white supremacist and you realize if I act in this situation, it could go wrong, and that's going to prevent me from doing what I need to do tomorrow, right? When that emotion gets strong, when that energy rises up in the body, we need an internal discipline that's going to allow us to say, I know when the time to act is, and I know how to act, right? And yeah, a lot of men want that in the bedroom too, but we need that in life. We need that in our families. We need that in our communities, right? And so Tantra is a practice and a discipline that helps us to cultivate that intensity, to direct that intensity, not just for the sake of bringing pleasure to somebody or to ourselves, but as a way of being, as, who we are, right? And when we can start to take that kind of power, out of the bedroom and into the rest of the world, we'll start to see our communities transform. So what I want from every brother who would participate in this is to gain an understanding of how energy moves through your being, Don't let it be something that just happens when you're unaware. When somebody says something that ticks you off, when something externally happens that sets you off, that upsets you, right? Often we don't understand how our energy and our emotion really work. And when we don't understand it and other people do, they can take advantage of us, right? And so I want every brother to understand how their energy works, how their emotion works. And I want them to be the master of that. So they could take all of that energy and emotion and they could direct it purposefully towards the things that they want to accomplish for themselves, for their families, for their communities. That's what I want to see happen as a result of this initiative.
And I affirm that that is going to happen. And in terms of the visionary, uh, I uh, would like to see men um, vibrating uh, much higher, living in their authenticity, having the tools, having the skills, the strategies to deal with uncertainty and fears that are experiencing themselves within their own being, the anxiety, and having techniques where they say, hey, where am I right now? One of
Hmm.
our mindfulness masters, Khalil's father, that's a constant question he's taught us to ask, where am I right now? And we're not talking about physicality, location, in that regard. We're talking about emotionally, we're talking about mentally, energetically, where am I right now? And so when you know where you are in this moment, you can shift. You don't have to live from a place of automation. You can live from your authenticity. You can take some deep breaths. You can center yourself. You can do some grounding techniques. And then you can raise the energy, raise the vibration up into those higher faculties, the crown, where you receive that divine insight and channeling from the universal flow. We have insights at all times in terms of how we should respond in a moment. Um, However, through our emotional imbalances, we block that. And then we live in those extremes. And so I want to help men live from that centered state of being where we then can access the best version of ourselves and how we want to show up personally. What are our personal visions? We have some men who are culinary artists. We have other men who are great with organic farming, with family counseling, with internal, external martial arts. And if, as we've already stated, they're living simply from that reptilian brain and that flight or fight state of being, they don't necessarily see the bigger picture and how they are called to actually be part of the solution. And so I want to help men live from that place of calm and centered state of being where they can actually then raise the vibration within themselves, and then they can raise the vibration within their families, the relationships, and ultimately our communities and the human family. So I'm excited about that. I'm raising the vibration so much. My earpiece is falling out right about now. And so in closing, uh, give us some words of wisdom, Khalil, going forward. What's one thing that black men can do that you're also going to elaborate and teach in the program as well? What's one tip that you can provide?
Breathe. It's as simple as that. If it's one tip, the tip is to breathe. Many of us just do not breathe, and because of that, we don't go into a mindful state when confronted with certain situations. We get into that fight or flight mentality. We lock up. We get caught up emotionally, and we just don't operate on the level of a higher level being that we have the ability to do so. So what it is, what I'll be, one of the things I'll be teaching, as will all will be, because it's all related to what we do, is I will be teaching and sharing with people how to breathe, and that's what I say right now. Just breathe. That's what we have to learn how to do.
And most people don't, when they think of martial arts or the internal warrior, they don't necessarily think of what you just provided. But as we know,
Hmm.
with all martial arts, whether it's internal or external, breathing is at the core of it. You know, when one's calm, in a state of calm, they can respond as opposed to react. So, and that's what we all should be doing. We shouldn't be reactionary to events that are unfolding. We should be in a state of calm where we can respond accordingly from our higher self. So I'm excited about that. Emmanuel, what's one tip that you can give us that's related to what you're going to be sharing in the program?
Whew, I would say the exact same thing. Breathe, especially at a time when society is trying to get you to chant that you can't breathe. You know what I'm saying? Like in Tantra, we use mantra, in the Kemetic cacao. You know, we use words of affirmation that are repeated for different reasons, for reprogramming the subconscious, for being able to release energy that's locked up, for being able to teach us new things. Sometimes we say things that don't have a translation, they don't even make sense, and the only reason we do it is to confound the mind. So that little voice that tries to annoy you with a bunch of other stuff is so distracted that you can move clearly on a vision, right? Mantra are very powerful, right? And right now there's a mantra going around saying, I can't breathe, right? But your
Mm.
breath is the connection between your conscious mind and your subconscious, right? The breath is the connection between I'm reacting in a way that I don't understand, and I have full control in this particular scenario, right? And that could be right on the edge of orgasm when you're trying to hold back. That could be when you're trying to have that conversation with your partner that's really difficult for you, right? And you want to be honest and you want to give your truth, but you start to feel things lock up inside. You feel that tension. That could be, when that person at your job says that thing that just ticks you the wrong way because you know they a little racist, right? All of these situations, your breath is the key to being able to move past that situation successfully, right? So in Tantra and martial arts and every facet of life, starting with the breath is necessary, right? And at this time, when there are forces that are trying to restrict our breathing, the most powerful thing that we can do is consciously take control over our breath and use that for our personal transformation.
Well, I tell you, I feel like taking a little breather right now. What you brothers just stated, Khalil and Emmanuel. So, what I would like to add from a visionary standpoint, what I want men to walk away with and experience is to be able to breathe. And so um, that's the first thing we do when we come into this world. Last thing we do when we leave. The quality of the breaths in between determine the quality of our state of being. If we're not inhaling the vitality of life on a daily basis, we're walking around, already with diminished vitality, an inability to really feel worthy, like we matter and we can give our best version of ourselves. And we don't know how to exhale and let go of stuff, then we're just a ticking time bomb. And it doesn't necessarily have to be anything relative to law enforcement or anything else. It could just be the family member that's coming into the room and, and telling you something in that moment that has nothing to do with anything else but their own internal emotional imbalance that is going on within that person there. And so, what I envisioned through some mindfulness strategies and techniques is being able to again help men see the bigger picture, to align with what they are called to do, like Haru or the falcon or the hawk that's able to see the situation high above. Because when we're able to see the big picture, we understand. There's an understanding that hey, what I just experienced is not worth my time and investment in terms of being confrontational. I need this employment. I need to be able to make it home because I have a reason for being, and I want to help youth. I want to help elders. I want to help the world evolve. And so I'm excited about that. Mindfulness and manhood, cultivating the sacred masculine during intense planetary changes. The visionary healer, warrior healer, tantric healer. Uh, if you want more information on how you can register, go to thesagemen.com. Again, thesagemen.com. TheSagemen.com. We're excited. We're going to roll out the schedule very soon. And the three of us are going to rotate. We're going to provide opportunities for the men who are involved to experience the tantric aspects of his being, and to cultivate a greater sense of the relationship with self and how he can be the best version of himself with his mate, his family, and ultimately humanity. The warrior, how he can actually activate and elevate that inner warrior so that we can win the battle within. That's the biggest battle. It's not the external battle, it's the battle within. And that oftentimes, rage, it's unfolding every single day. How we feel about ourselves, how we feel about others, whether we want to get up that particular day. And I'm excited about what that looks like as well. And then the visionary, again, showing up in those higher faculties with clarity of understanding on who I am and what I can bring to the table. And so I'm excited, man. Again, thesagemen.com. We want folks to go to the page, go ahead and register. And I would also say that this is going to be free. It's going to be complimentary. We are asking for donations, however, once you register. We are partnering with a mental health organization that, in particular, is in service to and support of Black men and Black people. And so we know right now, I've experienced in conversations with Black men and other Black folks on how just the collective trauma of seeing people that look like them brutalized in compromising situations on TV over and over and over again, what that does to their mental stability, their emotional disposition. And so we're excited. Again, thesagemen.com, mindfulness and manhood coming up very soon. And this is going to be an ongoing initiative. So, any closing words, Emmanuel? Please give us a closing word, brother.
Let's see. Well, in this time, it's important for us to all stay connected. It's important for us to, make sure that we're not bottling things up inside, that, we're leaning on our support systems, our friends, our family, our brotherhood, that we continue to talk to each other and to be open. The only way out is together. Um, and so let's continue to support one another. This initiative is here to be able to provide support and to make sure that we have the infrastructure in our community that we need to be able to move forward effectively. So, and again, we're doing this for free as a service to our community. So, we do hope that people choose to participate. We look forward to building with all of you brothers. It's up to us as Black men to hold each other accountable, to support each other, and to encourage each other in our growth. And so we have an opportunity to do that. Let's take that at this time so that we can continue to show up and be the best that we can for all of those who depend on us, and for all of those who need us, and for the generations to come.
Closing words, Khalil.
Um, I pretty much can just only echo what Emmanuel just said, man. Love yourself, love your people, love your family, love your community. Um, we have to take care of ourselves. And when I say that, I mean the level of love that we need. And interesting, I'm the warrior in the group, but I will tell you first and forehand, the most powerful weapon in terms of healing yourself and your people is love. You know, so we need to practice that love with ourselves and build our family. Build our community. Build ourselves up, and we will accomplish what we set out to do.
And closing words. I also would like to see Black men in particular. Um, show up better in the world as the best version of
mhm,
ourselves, um,
mhm,
transition beyond just existing
mhm,
to and surviving to thriving. Because every being on the planet, and that's what we want to create. We want to help create through our initiative, through our actions, a model for how people can transmute intense anger into collective enlightened action. And that's something that we all can benefit from, 7.7 billion people on the planet. And so, we understand that there's certain issues that are particular, so maybe specific to Black men that they have to heal from, and they have to be able to have conversations from hundreds of years of injustice. But we're also clear that what we see out in the world is affecting every being on the planet. That's called collective
mhm,
consciousness. And it's not just Black folks, it's all people on the planet. And so when you have enough people who are doing the internal work, the energy work, that greatly shifts the collective energy. So what we're doing right now is not just for us, it's for the entire human family. So again, thesagemen.com, mindfulness and manhood. Sign up, women out there. Tell men, your brothers, your uncles, your fathers, your sons, people that you know of, your mates. Tell them to register, sign up, that they are that there are men out there who are trained to help them deal with what they're experiencing right now in the world, so that they can shift and be the best version of themselves. If you're a man and you're listening to this, we want to encourage you to register. This is an opportunity for you to actually be the best version of yourself. And when really, who doesn't want that? Who doesn't want to be the best version of themselves? So thank you so much. We look forward to raising the vibration. Thank you, Emmanuel. Thank you, Khalil. And let's embrace mindfulness and manhood.